Hey everyone, welcome to Clarity Chat, 80th and the 20th Ask Me Anything session. So this we are continuing with the AMA sessions before to the new design of the Clarity Chat. So this is a free-flowing session for us to have stimulating and candid discussion, anything around leadership, technology management, even anything that's on your mind in terms of challenges. So today we'll cover some backlog of past questions on startup challenges, managing crisis, especially in production context, making effective project plan, working backwards from outcomes, and much more. And we will of course balance these with live questions from the audience. So last time, many people reported that they faced an issue where LinkedIn, so where there was a disruption. When it restarted, LinkedIn restarted from the very beginning. We investigated the issue, and last time the disruptions were from LinkedIn itself, and the only way to this issue, that means to catch up to the current discussion, is to refresh your browser a few times. So in case you face a disruption from LinkedIn today and it restarts right at the beginning of the session, just do a couple of refreshes and the issue should get solved. So I just get that out of the door before we begin. Okay. So please ask any question to managing IT leadership, any chronic issue on your mind. And yeah, let's discuss challenges around the question of technology is necessary but not sufficient. So what is it that needs to be brought to extra that will make technology success for your organization or your client's organization? But before that, we have a quick reaction on who wins the third place in the ongoing Soccer World Cup and who wins the World Cup. So the third place matches today, and the finals are tomorrow. I'm looking forward to watching these. In fact, tomorrow we have friends gathering, a sort of party. Well, that party is to celebrate golf. But interestingly, we'll be watching the World Cup final. Well, my picks are Morocco for third place and France for the fourth place. France for winning the cup. But you don't know. I think the teams are very, very strong. All teams are very strong. Croatia and Argentina, you can't write them off as yet. They play some fiery and very, very fast-paced golf. I love watching these matches. Actually, the recordings, because they are like past midnight. But I was watching those semi-final recordings, and I had two takeaways from those recordings. I mean, from those matches. One, a strong defense. So we have seen teams have very, very, very strong defense. In fact, Morocco's defense was impenetrable, and my God, that's how they reached the World Cup final, because I didn't see all their matches. Of course, they have very strong, very strong, attack as well. But defense, their defense has stood out, and I think they lost the semi-final because a few of their defenders were out. And in our context, I remember the video. The discussion we had in the last couple of chats around risk management, and one of the posts I wrote about was that if you have a very strong risk management as part of your program management, there's no way you will fail, because you will catch every point of failure that happens. And I think second big takeaway for me from this World Cup has been counter attack. It's like bouncing back, So I could watch only the first two goals of Argentina versus Morocco, and both of them were like lightning counter attack. And I was like, oh my god, that's how it is, like, and when you are down, when you are under threat, that's the time, like, you find an opening and then push back hard, and just with a lightning speed that surprises opponent. What are your takes? It will be interesting to hear, your takes on this World Cup and the way these have unfolded, as well as, of course, your picks for the third place and the. Well, but yes, of course, let's move on to the real topics. I offer any one of you to come live with me with your discussion topic or your case study. Yeah, send us a comment, and my team will send you the link to the virtual studio. And yeah, please ask your questions, and you will get some opportunities and all of them with a practical with a practical twist. As I call it, ClariTea chat is all experiences, no gyan. But before I go ahead, let me request all my audiences to share your name and where you're joining from in the comment box of LinkedIn or YouTube. And let's see who has joined us already. Harsh, hello. Good to see you. Good to see you here. I don't recall having seen you here before. So, yeah, welcome to ClariTea chat. And we have Rakesh Singh, my college junior. Hey, thanks, Rakesh, for joining. Good evening. Okay, guys, keep it coming. And yeah, send in your questions, anything on your mind, as well as, like, I haven't seen as yet, your picks for the World Cup and any takeaways from the World Cup. We have Dattatray joining us from Muscat. Thanks, Dattatray, for joining. I miss meeting you there, but yeah, looking forward on my next trip. Okay, so yeah, let's take some of our questions from the backlog by the time you guys think of your questions. Okay, so first question was from Pawan Roy about managing crisis, especially in the production floor, and taking quick support from partners. Well, may I request anyone who has faced a crisis on the production floor, and especially in manufacturing, any of your systems going down, SAP going down, and um, how you handled it. Please do send in your experience, or if you want to come live, let me know. We'll send you the link. But let me take you to some of my experiences, not exactly on the production floor, but this was, I mean, taken over as a CIO, and this was 30th of September, and there was a crisis all around, in terms of production bookings, as well as the sales that we were doing. The SAP had gone really, really low, and it was 9 o'clock at night, and people had to meet their half-yearly targets, and we had a sort of, there was a lot of murmurs all around in terms of like how it will happen and all that. So, well, IBM used to manage our entire backend of basis, SAP basis, and they were housed like a few blocks away from our building. It was around evening 9:30. Whenever these situations happen, so the first thing I try to do is to be on the ground and look at things with my own eyes. So I said the hub of entire action is the basis room. I want to visit there people said, "Oh no, you're CIO, you don't need to visit the basis room." I said, "No, nothing doing. Let me go there." So I visited with a couple of leaders and talked to those people. Um, I think the initial reaction was like, CIO has come, so like let's sort of let's try to sugarcoat things and all. And I was like, no, guys, I want to hear the truth, because if we don't meet our half yearly target, then we are in soup, and you guys are going to get from everyone. So I'm here to defend you, but I can't help you if you don't tell me the truth. So the truths started coming out. The first one that came out was that it was all okay till 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, and not much issue. And then suddenly, this whole pressure started. And then there are people who are filing those half year reports and all of that. I said, what do you think we should do? And they said, these reports are killing the system, so we have to kill the reports. But these are very senior people in finance and costs, and who are filing these reports. In these reports, so we need to do something. I said, good. So what next? I immediately got in touch with the rest of my team in the plants and all, and tried to get another sense as to, when I'm sitting here in operations, how they are feeling the heat. What they told me is that they're unlikely to be able to, even if we set right the system performance somehow now, they are unlikely to meet their targets by 12 o'clock. I know we were a little strict about. There was quite a bit of discipline which had come about in closing the period at midnight, or maybe by 12:30, but not beyond that. So now this was on my feet, and given that that I was on the floor and I was in touch, actually gave me a lot of confidence to take things in my own hands. Even though that was my first visit to basis operations center. So first thing, I gave them a carte blanche, a free hand. I said, listen, kill any report, because the transactions are more important. Reports can come out tomorrow. And if somebody tries to, call you, boss upon you, here is my number. Give it to them, right? So I gave them sort of a complete covering fire on taking those urgent actions, which may mean that they have to put off a few senior people, right? The second thing I did was, I called up our head of accounts, who was responsible for period closing exceptions, etc. And mind you, this was 30 at night, and he's a very, very senior guy, second in command in finance behind CFO. I called him up at 10:30 at night. I said, sir, there's a bit of crisis. The businesses are not going to be able to meet your numbers, to meet their numbers. I'm here in basis room. I'm fighting the fire, but I need your support in extending the period closing till about 2:30 or 3 at night. Please to somebody who closes the period after he has a thumbs up from everyone. Rest of it we'll handle in terms of managing. A few questions, but we did say that, listen, accountability on IT side to make this happen. But of course, there's a support that we require from accounts to make that happen. And then we agreed, and so that got closed. So and then we kind of sent a word around, a feedback around as well, that listen, which is non-urgent, please don't use SAP for that. We need it only for billings. So yes, we sailed through that. We overcame a sort of mini crisis, I can. But I've had one more crisis, which was a 13-day crisis, maybe some other day on that. But if I try to summarize the takeaways, so number one is that you have to take charge. Crisis management cannot be delegated, cannot be outsourced. You're the top man in the function. You got to take crisis management, right? Number two is that you got to be, I mean, GEM most important when crisis happens. That means you got to be at the scene of the crisis. You got to talk to the people who are there. They know it the best. So they will give you the ideas, but they don't have the empowerment to execute those ideas. So you taking charge and you being on the ground gives them, uh, you know, allows that empowerment and enablement to happen where their ideas get executed. Like in this case, killing of reports. Important thing is that we have to act as per the organizational objectives. It's no longer a crisis is never a departmental crisis. It's always it's because it is affecting the organization. So you got to pull in the rest of the stakeholders, either who are impacted or who have to support you in managing the crisis, and you got to get alignment of purpose established with them, and then move on. And last and not the least, you got to set up some immediate processes and exception management, because what you're doing to handle the crisis is beyond us. So there are people who are going to cry foul, the people who are going to escalate, and you got to have a proper escalation management process which stops at you, and where you got to but that escalation management process is required to empower your people. Finally, there's a big element of emotions, because when crises happen, some people are angry, some people are distraught, some people are completely defensive. They are under. I think what you need to do as a leader is to calm down everyone and just give that confidence that, guys, we'll overcome it together. So no, let's bring down the tempers, let's bring down the emotion, let's be more logical than emotional, and we'll always have an opportunity to question each other post crisis. So that was a long summary, so let me give you a short summary of it. Take charge, okay, personally, to be on the scene of action. There is nowhere by important than a crisis. Number three, the people on the ground know it best. So empower them by picking ideas and then giving them some sort of a covering fire. Number four, collaborate with the other stakeholders and in managing the crisis and establishing the goal alignment on the problem that you're trying to solve. And finally, calm down the emotions. Big job of the leader is to calm down the emotions and just align people towards solving the problem rather than shouting at each other. I hope it helps, and I can see many comments coming in here. Let me pick up some of those comments. And guys, yeah, the open question for clarity chat participants at whatever time you're joining. Yeah, some of your takeaways from the ongoing world, especially the semi-finals, um, and your picks for the winners and the third place. So I have Dattatray rooting for. Okay, so we have Agharia, Morocco today, and winner France. Oh yeah, love you, Mohammed. I mean, your picks are the same as mine. Yash Mathur from Raurkela. Hey, hi, thanks for joining us. Okay, so we have another question from Mohammedhussain. It is how will IT react in crisis, especially when lots of resources were added during COVID period by companies? Mm. So I'm not clear about your question, Mohammedhussain, because What is this crisis that you're saying? Is it that the recession that everyone is predicting that will come? Is it the recession that is being predicted and the crisis related to that, or is it something else? Because yeah, during COVID, quite a lot of resources were added, and you're probably surmising that these people might be redundant, and I don't think you can do much. Those are company decisions. But if you can be clear in defining what that crisis is that you're talking about, that will help this question a little bit later. Okay, once I have the clarification from you. Oh, so this is the next question from Dattatray asking: Is CIO soon be reporting to CISO? Considering that CIO is all about only uptime, whereas CISO not only for availability but even for confidentiality, integrity, and even for information authenticity. What's your perspective on this? So again, so the first question is CIO reporting to CISO. Um, I think there is no single answer to it, because in companies where which are very very highly regulated, the CISO any doesn't report to CIO. CISO reports to the chief risk officer or the risk committee of the board, right? Just because that element is much bigger in those industries, like for example in banking. Okay, in the other organizations, I think one of the things you need to correct your understanding that the three is about that CIO is all about uptime and availability. No, that is the job of the head of infrastructure, head of IT infrastructure. IT has six distinct functions which I defined when I was modeling the IT organization. So one is the business relationships, the business success, and that is the biggest one, because whatever you're doing is for making making businesses successful. And since every single business function is your customer, you got to set up a customer relationship management with your businesses. That means you got to be always in this. So that's a business relationship. The second is the program management. You are always going to be running large programs in the organization. You requires a certain amount of I would say expertise and finesse in running programs. One is IT services. In fact, what you are pointing towards is the IT services. So what you're pointing towards is the IT services, which is like all about your infrastructure, your SAP running non-stop, your video conferencing, your laptops, desktops, networks, and you name it. So anything related to hardware. The first level of defense, which is the information security, the last mile security, also includes provisioning of IT assets to employees and managing the endpoints, etc., etc. The Wi-Fi's and all that. And then you have the technology function. So you need that technical architecture function in the organization to to not only identify or select new technologies for the company, but to also upkeep the architecture upkeep and the various architecture related documentation for the organization. Okay, and this is like the brains of IT function. Then you require management. We say in Clarity Chat that 90% of 95% that 90 to 95% of your talent is on the on the vendor side, and and that is reflected in your delivery. I'm yet to see an organization which doesn't depend on vendors for or partners for delivery, either for services or projects. So, and these are like services contracts, fairly. I would say there's not everything that you need from them can be written in a contract. So there's a element of governance, there's an element of accountability, and therefore you need a vendor management function there, right? And yeah, so those are the 6 functions you require. You require business relationships, you require program management, you require IT services, you require architecture function, uh, you require vendor management, and finally, yes, information security. And information security needs to work with all of them. Like, for example, they with the technology function to make sure that the technology risk and information security risks are adequately, included in your technology. They have to work with IT services to make sure that your first level of defense, which is at the services layer, where you are managing probably security operations, or like automated security incidents, remediation, etc. Those things are happening. And then they have a lot of things to do on their own, which is like driving the security governance at different levels, at the top management level as well as at the lower levels. I think they have to own up the entire employee training initiatives. They also have to do their part in in evaluating and sort of recommending new security technologies. They have to always look at the threat landscape. They have to network the entire information security ecosystem. So it's a teamwork. As I said, the highly regulated organizations will have an element of where the CISO will report to a risk function, but I think for the rest, it is an inseparable part of the IT function, and therefore works with the CIO, right? So just to summarize, Dattatray, um, in those exceptional circumstances that um, where the regulation is very stringent, in those industries, CISO will be a independent role, reporting to the risk committee or the chief risk officer. But in most other organizations, will be a part of the CIO function in a fully, I would say, expanded fashion, where the CIO function itself will be comprising of business relationships, program management, IT services management, vendor management, technology and architecture, and security. And these functions are very, very well enmeshed. I hope that answers your question. I know you have asked this before, um, but this time I decided to give a better and more logical answer, Dattatray. Okay, so I have Sajid here. I think this is more like a reflection from the World Cup. The role of a leader is to create more leaders. Leadership 101, best example, Messi. Mm, I couldn't agree more with you, Sajid. The role of a leader is to create more leaders. In fact, that is what managers from leaders. Managers don't create. Um, Managers don't create more managers, but leaders create more. Individual contributors don't create more individual contributors, but leaders create more leaders. That's what separates the men from the boys, the leaders from the managers. That you are always looking at passing on the baton. You're always looking at helping others to take up the leadership, to be the next set of leaders. Now, Sajid, if you have any example of Messi, how how he has built other leaders, would be happy for you to on that. But I saw one video, I think that went viral, where Argentina won in a penalty shootout, where an Argentinian player basically scored the goal, the winning goal, whereas the Argentinian goalkeeper had saved a couple of goals, right? Which then made it possible for them to win by scoring that goal. And that video was like, real lesson in leadership that all the Argentinian team actually went and like, hugged that player who scored the goal, and they celebrated that player. And it was only Messi who actually went towards the Argentine goalkeeper and hugged him and sort of thanked him for saving those two goals. So that's another. That was like a real leadership lesson that you know that you don't really go by the recency effect. So what everyone was going after was the recency effect, that someone scored the latest goal, but then to bring that uh, that important contribution from the goalkeeper was there, which sort of forgot in the heat of the moment, but Messi remembered. So I loved that part of it. Okay, so Mohammed, so you also let me take up your question now. So this was about how we get in coming crisis, especially when lots and lots of resources were added during COVID period by companies. So Mohammed, see, there's one, I would say, characteristic of a crisis. It never comes. It never comes after announcing itself. Okay, so there may be a lot of signals that this is likely to come. Crisis is generally one event that has a cascading effect that leads to further events, and that entire sequence of events is very unpredictable, right? So you can always be geared up. So two three things you can do. Number one is that you can do some scenario planning, right? So you can actually have a brainstorming that, hey, you know what, how will this play out? Okay, how will in terms of what kind of events may happen? Let's say somebody going bankrupt, or somebody cutting down their uh, spending completely, or let's say a class action against somebody. So you know what kind of risks are appearing, so you can actually think of forecasting those events, and then sort of try to uh, do what they call broadly as scenario planning in terms of how things will pan out, right? Well, there could be that the this crisis will be prolonged. That means it will run for, let's say, a few years. I have heard that as well, and I have also heard that this crisis will be short-lived. That things will bounce back very quickly, and recession is not likely to last for 1 or 2 years. Probably, that people are that the economists around the world and the banks around the world are, they have seen enough, I would say, business scenarios where and their ability to respond is much fast. Like, for example, the way they responded in the COVID crisis, and of course, which had unintended um, consequences once the pandemic got over, which is inflation. They pumped so much money into the market that that supply of money caused inflation. If you know what I mean of economics, right? So um, so just to kind of summarize my response, one, you cannot predict how a crisis will unfold. That means how a sequence of events. This is not one event. Crisis is always a sequence of events. Crisis cannot be predicted in terms of the sequence of events through which it will unfold. So you got to be on your feet. Okay. The uh, the answer manage crisis is in terms of your preparedness, not in terms of your SOP. You can't have an SOP for a crisis. The third thing is that you can at best you can do some sort of a scenario planning exercise in terms of what are the alternative sequences of events which may unfold, and you may have a plan for each one of them. But I do not see IT being direct line of attack in terms of the crisis that might unfold later. So we will have to align our actions to the business action. So businesses will come under different set of pressures as these crisis scenarios unfold, and as technology function, we have to align with those. So I hope that that helps, Mohammad Hussain. So let me know if you have any follow-up questions, right? Okay, so then we have, let me pick up another. I don't see any other questions here. So let me pick up questions from our backlog. Okay. I have one question in my backlog from Aganathan Madhavan. He says, how to make effective project plan backwards. And I'm assuming that it is how to make effective project plan working from outcomes. Yeah, I would like to know your views, folks, as to how do you make your project plans? I know everyone makes project plans. So how do you make an effective project plan? Um, and please, put in any comments as to how you have done sort of planning backwards from outcomes. Okay, so let me give you my thoughts while I do type yours. The first one is like, we have to start with the end goal. We have to have a absolutely clear picture of the goal, and many a times it helps to write down that end goal. Okay, so I know nowadays in my clarity charts I always keep coming to flock and go. Uh, so we when we were trying to sort of identify what all it will take in terms of a product for group experiences, we started writing down stories. Okay, so we wrote down stories of, let's say, of friends is trying to go to Cancun, in Mexico. um, so what all they will do. So we basically envisaged a scenario where, let's say, flock and go is already used, and we said that, hey, you know what, we have not defined functionality yet, but just imagine it's a technology application which is helping you streamline your, let's say, activities of with your friends when you are going to Cancun. Okay, so we started writing, and where we just said, hey, and they use flock and go for resolving this. There was a disagreement, they used flock and go for resolving this. They had to share expenses, they used it for resolving it. They had, some people want to do something, certain things, some people didn't want to do certain things, they use flock and go, right? So then when you write down this entire story, which is in a slightly unlimited manner, then we said, oh, okay, but we have written it that they will can go for this, but what will it have to be in disagreements? Okay, so we have to build polls into flock and go, right? Then some people want to go for scuba diving, some people don't want to go for scuba diving. Let's create some optional some add-ons there, as an add discount we feature around it. So those are that visualization of, I would say, not visualization, I would say a detailed visualization of your end goal in terms of what will be my to be situation in terms of the different stakeholders, different players, different persona. How will each one of them, their life change post me doing this project? I think that will give you a very, very good clarity on not just what you need to do, but also what kind of challenges you will be facing, let's say, management point of view, as well from a feature product feature point of view, as well as from a project management point of view. So start with a visualized end goal, and then you have to convert that to a roadmap. You cannot do everything at once. So you have to say that, hey, what are my going to be my biggest priorities? And put them first. And that prioritization is one of the most important things you have to do, especially when you're running an agile methodology, right? So it's always about prioritize what you need in the next sprint, prioritize what you need in the next 2 or 3 sprints. Then focus on the process of execution. So you have to define the processes upfront. Um, of course, I have very strong conviction about managing risk. Okay, so you must always write down very what all can go wrong. Okay, so don't think about risk as risk per se, because our minds get limited. I would like to broadly look at risk, anything that can go wrong. So we must have that mindset of having a brainstorming. So we should always brainstorming on what can go wrong in most outlier scenarios. Okay, and we must have a playbook for handling those risks. So just to summarize this question, number one, we must have a detailed visualization of the future scenario. Detailed means it should be highly visual. Okay, and many times it helps to write it down in terms of your stories. Number two is that uh, uh, we should prioritize clear steps in which we have reached there. And third is that we need a very strong playbook for whatever can go wrong. We must have a certain steps for doing that. That means we should have a good risk management. So visualization of eventual outcome, uh, uh, prioritization, and risk management. So these are the three things. So these are the three things I would suggest for making an effective project plan work outcomes. Okay, so let's see if I have more comments here, which I always prioritize on those. So Dattatray being not very clear organizational hierarchy, board of directors versus dependent director versus managing director. Hey guys, are you facing a bit of disruption in the connectivity? I seem to be losing in between, but let me know. I'll try to change my network. As of now, let's continue. I think it's going for a couple of seconds. Okay. So next time I face a disruption, I'll try to change my network. The only problem with changing networks is that I might or comments. I'm not doing. So there's a bug here that if I change my network and I have to restart my studio, uh, the comments which I see here, which are coming from LinkedIn and YouTube. Okay. So Dattatray, you have this question, not very clear organization hierarchy, board of directors versus independent director versus managing director versus and versus vice. Don't bother yourself with it. Those are just designations. I think we need to go beyond designations. An effective way of managing in an organization is to always look at the real the influencer roles. Okay, not just the direct reporting roles. So even when your CFO may have five or six direct reports, there are a couple of guys who are really bright and whom he or she is listening to, and to make sure that you use that ladder for the influence. I don't know what was the purpose of Dattatray, if you can, be clear about the purpose of your question, that will help. But I think purely from an individual's point of view, don't bother yourself with these hierarchies. You need two or three things if you are managing any lack of clarity in hierarchies. Number one, find yourself a mentor. Okay, the people in the organization, regardless of whatever level they are, they have the intelligence, the network, and the wisdom to tell you, who will get done. Okay, uh, and it is not. It is yeah. So, and it has got nothing to do with hierarchies. I can repeat many times. So, find yourself a mentor who will help you navigate the organizational hierarchies, both you know, both up and down, as well as sideways. Okay, many times the influencers are outside the function. So, first thing, find yourself a mentor. Second thing is, be very clear about purpose. Okay, and find out people who have the same purpose as yours, and they are your collaborators, right? So in IT, whenever I used to have, um, I would look at that, hey, so I want to improve process discipline. So who are the guys who will have compliance pressure? So typically you will find that these are audit guys, who will keep an eye on the compliance. And sometimes you go and have a discussion with them as to how to improve the discipline in your processes, and discuss with them, and they will then guide you as to what will get things done in the way that sort of helps you, right? So find mentors, find collaborators. Okay, and I would say just go beyond organizational hierarchies. So just to summarize, don't bother about complex organizational hierarchies. The way to work with and around hierarchies is to find a mentor, find collaborators, okay, and uh, and find people with common purpose. Okay, so I hope that helps. Okay, let me see. I have got a few more comments. I managed to change my network without really losing your comments. So thank goodness. Thank you, StreamYard. Thank you, LinkedIn. Okay, I have one comment from Sajid. He says that one other benefit of these sessions, apart from the obvious great insights from a leader like Jagdish, being a talent hunter, I reached out to a participant from last week's program and have him in my interview process. We'll update if it's a success. Oh my God, Sajid! I This is the first time I'm hearing something esoteric like this, that you are able to find, again, as I said, people with common purpose, people in the same industry, people who can be your colleagues, who can be your subordinates, finding them in Clarity Chat. This made my day. I'm so happy that it has worked for you in a completely different way. So I have Karthikeyan here from Karthikeyan Sivaswamy from Bangalore. Oh, no problem, no problem, Karthik. You're welcome anytime. Send in your questions, man, but not very long, okay? And Dattatray, what responsibilities do they all carry? Designations up to managers, supervisors, or senior managers cleared, but higher hierarchy is always confusing. Oh, don't bother, Dattatray. See, everyone is doing a job. They're getting paid for that. So let me let me let me tell you a joke on that note. Okay. So me and my wife, um, we have very clear-cut roles. So, there's no jhagda between us. We have very clear-cut roles. I basically take all the big decisions, and she takes all the small decisions. I'm sure you have heard this before. So I take all the big decisions, like for example, will France win or will Argentina win, or um, will there be a recession or will there not be a recession? And will the stock market sort of reach 100,000 in the next 2 3 years or not? Those are all the big decisions I take, and my wife takes all the small decisions, like how much budget we have for the month, and like where should we go for the next weekend outing, or where should we take the next vacation, what color of trousers I should wear or buy, whether I have certain t-shirt, whether I have certain clothes to be disposed of. So all these small decisions my wife takes. So so what's the message here? The message here is, um, there are things that will happen without, that have got no uh, impact on what you think or what you don't think, right? So I think the important thing is to think about those things, or to bother about those things which either impact me directly, or where I can impact those issues directly. So it's like, I would love to be in my wife's shoes. I would love to be taking those decisions, but I can't. So I take all the big decisions. So therefore, so my message would be that, please focus on things under your control, or the things that impact you. Okay. The global problems, there are enough of those global problems which you and I cannot solve, or which you or I cannot be bothered or troubled with. So let's leave them on their own, isn't it? Um, but as I said, so let me go beyond jokes. So that at any point in time, if any of these things are impacting you, I assume, then take that advice. Find a mentor, someone who has been a long time in the organization, someone who's connected to the senior management, and ask them this question. They will tell you more clearly about these roles and the interrelationships, and these will change from organization to organization. So as far as your organization is concerned, or as far as, let's say, your client's organization is concerned, there is someone who knows. So reach out to him. Many a times these things are not written anywhere. Okay. Okay. So we are at 5:53. Let me move towards a closure. I do not see any further questions here. So guys, if anyone has any last minute, rapid fires, uh, please send across. Or, like Sajid mentioned, if anyone has, any value add, which is like completely unforeseen, send across. These are the things that, make the whole effort and, everything worthwhile, right? Okay. So let's move towards closing the session now. We are at 5:54. So here is a quick summary um, on what we have covered in today's Ask Me Anything. So the first question we picked up from the backlog was about managing crisis, especially in production floor, or in, like, your production systems. So take charge personally. Um, have clear communications. Form an immediate process for exception management. Be on the ground. Do Gemba. Set up an escalation process in place to empower your teams. Give them covering fire, and calm down the emotions. The biggest job of a leader in a crisis situation is to get everyone to calm down and focus on the objective, focus on solving the problems, than solving each other. Okay. So the second question was about CIO reporting to CISO. uh, where the question had a big assumption that CIO is all about uptime and availability, whereas CISO is about securing, protecting the organization, etc., etc. So here we first clarified the confusion around the role. So the role of a CIO is not only uptime and availability. It is much beyond that. So we defined 6 functions in IT: business relationship, project and program management, technology, IT services management, vendor management, and information security. So the uptime and availability is part of the IT services function. That's not CIO. The CIO has to take care of a much bigger, role. So CISO logically is part of the CIO function, but in organizations which are highly regulated, you will find them reporting to either a chief risk officer or the risk committee of the board. Then then there was a question about how will IT react in the coming crisis. So um, the summary of this answer is that you can't predict the crisis. Crisis is a sequence of events, and this sequence of events cannot be forecasted. The best you can do is to do a scenario planning exercise. What are the various alternative um, set of events that could unfold, and what could be our reaction for that? So you may have multiple playbooks. So you can have a set of plans for the potential crisis. But crisis generally they hit the business first. So as IT, we have to be ready to support the business in any crisis. Okay. How to make an effective project plan, working backwards from outcomes. Um, so 3 things here. Number one, have a very clear and as detailed a visualization of your outcomes as possible, because that then gives you a clear path of what all I need to build and how I need to build. The second is, when you have that kind of rich picture of what needs to be done, then you have to start prioritization. And unless you do prioritization, you cannot reach the MVP first. Or let me put it in a positive way. If you prioritize well, you can go from a quick MVP to MVP2, MVP3, MVP4, um, and you can also build the learnings of each MVP into the next one. Okay. And the third thing is, of course, managing risk. Uh, Having this frequent discussion about what can go wrong, and then always being prepared for what can go wrong. Right. The other one was like about the clarity in organization hierarchy. Many times you don't know who does what, so couple of things: find a mentor who can help you sort of demystify the various roles and hierarchies. uh, Personally, go beyond organization hierarchy to find the collaborators. Yeah, one is people who have a common purpose with yours, and make them your collaborators. And of course, as I said, find mentors. Uh, and I think on the same question, on a lighter note, let us let us um, let's be clear about what impacts my work, what impacts my deliverables, and beyond that, let them do their job, right? So that's the summary, and a good engaging discussion, quite a few questions. Again, we couldn't cover our entire backlog. So uh, we are just at the hour. We are at 5:59. And one of the feedbacks that I've got from all of you in the sessions, feedbacks that we are running for the last month or so, is that finish on time. So for the last few clarity chairs, we have been able to finish within plus minus 2-3 minutes of the hour. So on that note, I will leave the rest of the weekend for you guys to enjoy. Please enjoy your family time. Thank you for attending and engaging, and to all the To all of you who are watching the recorded version of this chat leisurely over the weekend, thank you so much to you guys too. We do see, you know, the number of views expanding rapidly over the weekend and over the next 3-4 days. So that means that most of you are watching it as a recording. So I just want to acknowledge my gratitude to all of you too. So guys, thank you so much for attending, and we'll come again next weekend. Till then, bye bye, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. See you.